My name is Michael Turner, 48 years old. 22 years poured into the same company, the same office, the same old wooden desk. It got this scratch I never bothered to fix. Like a personal mark, no one else touched. I'm not the type to make a lot of noise. In meetings, I was usually the guy at the end of the table, taking notes, listening. Sometimes I chime in with an idea, short, to the point, no frills. I remember that autumn day vividly. The sky was gray, like someone had washed all the blue out of the city. Outside the window, leaves were drifting down onto the stone pathway. The office felt cold, not just because the AC was cranked low, but because the tension, it felt like it was about to snap. Everyone knew our company, a mid-sized software firm, might not make it through the winter. And there I was in the tech department, staring at a computer screen flashing budget errors. A week before, finance had laid it out bluntly: cut operating costs by 30% or face mass layoffs, maybe even shut down some branches. I couldn't just sit there, not because I was scared of losing my job, but because I saw what would really kill this place. It wasn't the crisis itself, it was the resignation. People giving up. So I started gathering everything. All the internal reports from the last 2 years, operational stats, performance reviews, customer service data, even how often the damn printer jammed. I worked late, night after night, just the steady tap, tap, tap of my keyboard and the yellow glow from my old desk lamp filling the silence. And then it hit me: if we could pull all that data onto one single analytics platform, use AI to predict problems before they happened, we wouldn't just save money, we'd actually get better. More efficient. I didn't tell anyone. Knew if I just talked about it, they wouldn't buy it. So I quietly built a prototype, ran a simulation for 3 days straight. The results, they made me just sit there, stunned. Applied right, this system could cut operating costs by over 40%. I printed the report, slipped it into a plastic cover, and Monday morning, I knocked on Richard Hayes' door, the CEO. His office was on the 14th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, walls lined with awards. Richard, he was sharp but pragmatic. Didn't like risks. But I wasn't there to persuade him with words. I was there to show him what I saw. When I pulled up the simulation, I remember exactly how his expression shifted from doubt to focus, then silence. A long silence, just the sound of the wind whistling faintly through the window seals. "How long to implement?" he finally asked, his voice low. 8 weeks, I said, no hesitation. "If I have full authority." He nodded. And just like that, I got to work. Those 8 weeks were a blur. Barely slept. Ate at my desk, sometimes caught an hour in my swivel chair. Pretty much only went home to shower and change. My tech team was confused at first, but they got on board quick. They knew I wasn't doing it for me. I was doing it for them. The ones who'd be first out the door if we went under. Shift to success, but understated. Week 8, we launched the trial. First 2 weeks, operating costs dropped 18%. The next month, 36%. Nobody doubted it anymore. Clients were happier. The system was faster, more accurate. Finance stopped sending those warning emails. Our stock, after tanking for 3 months, started to climb back up. I didn't go on stage at the company meeting. Didn't give a speech. Richard announced the success. And honestly, I didn't mind. I never did the work for applause. I did it because I believed it was the right thing to do. Introduce a seed of doubt, foreshadowing. But deep down, there was this little hollow space. Walking past the conference room, hearing the applause for Richard, while I just quietly went back to my desk, looking at the lines of code I'd poured those nights into, I had this fleeting thought. Will anyone remember who wrote the first line? Probably not. But back then, I still believed that was okay. That the work mattered more than the credit, as long as it kept us all afloat. I had no idea the very system I built to save the company would be the thing they'd use to replace me. But that came later. I don't remember exactly when things started to change. There wasn't one big moment, no warning bell. It was just a gradual, strange, kind of quiet settling in around me. First, it was the meetings I wasn't invited to anymore. My name would be on the initial email chain, but I'd show up to the conference room and find the attendee list had been adjusted. "Sorry, Michael. This is a high-level strategy session." Richard's assistant would murmur, avoiding my eyes. I was used to being out of the spotlight. That wasn't new. But this felt different. This time, someone else was stepping into the space I used to occupy. Jude Carter, 28. Been with us less than a year. Slick back hair, crisp white shirts, always perfectly pressed. Talked smooth, had this little half smirk he probably thought was charming. Jude wasn't the best coder in the department. Not even close. But he knew how to make people think he was the best. In meetings, he always said exactly what Richard wanted to hear. If I pointed out a potential glitch in the AI, Jude would chuckle and say, right there in front of everyone, Michael tends to be a bit conservative. Understandable, he built it. But to really move forward, we need to think bigger. People would laugh. I'd just sit there, feeling my grip tighten slightly on my pen. Then I started noticing technical emails bypassing my review. Clients needing system tweaks were told to contact Jude directly. Richard stopped calling me in for advice. He called Jude. One late afternoon, I found Jude holding court in the 6th floor conference room. He was presenting an expansion plan for the AI, adding an automated response tool for customer service. I stood outside, watching through the glass. He was pointing at the screen, talking fast, and I realized the descriptions, the core concepts, they were lifted straight from my documentation. When a meeting broke up, I pushed the door open, trying to keep my voice even. Jude turned, flashing that easy smile like we were old pals. "What did you think of the presentation?" he asked. I looked him straight in the eye. "Are you planning on citing your sources?" He just shrugged. "We're all working on the same system, Michael. It's company IP now, right?" I didn't answer, just nodded slowly and walked out. But my feet felt heavy, each step like I was grinding my own value into the carpet. That night, I went home early, sat alone in my small kitchen, slowly turning my father's old watch over and over in my hand. The crystal scratched, the leather strap frayed. I remembered him telling me once, being the tech guy often means standing backstage. Just don't ever let anyone put out the light inside you. That light inside me felt like a single fading ember right then, escalating the conflict, the warning. The next day, I went in early. The office was still quiet, just the hum of the vents and the yellow glow on rows of dark computer screens. I opened the AI system, went through the logs. Something was wrong. The system was misinterpreting customer feedback. It was scoring satisfaction based on keywords, but it wasn't understanding negative context. I printed out the analysis, took it straight up to Richard's office. He was standing by the window again, back to me. "I think the system needs closer human oversight," I said, putting the printout on his desk. "The AI is misreading the data. If we don't correct it, it's going to start generating bad responses." Richard didn't turn around, just said, "Thanks, Michael. I'll have Jude look into it." I stood there for a beat, then gave a slight nod and left. The door clicked shut behind me. That sound, it felt like someone closing a chapter. My chapter. That afternoon, I ran into Jude by the elevators. He hit the button for 14, then turned to me, a glint in his eye. "You know, the great thing about AI, Michael," he said, almost casually, "it never gets tired, never asks for a raise. And most importantly, it doesn't need recognition." I didn't say anything, just held his gaze. "Your time's over, Michael." He smiled that half smile as the elevator doors slid shut, cutting off the hallway light. I stood there in the dimness for another moment. Not because I was speechless, but because I knew, right then, I wasn't the creator anymore. I was just the guy who'd kept the thing alive long enough for someone else to take it over. And if I didn't speak up, didn't fight for the truth, I'd just be buried under the shadow of my own creation. I just didn't realize that same shadow was about to swallow them all. That Friday, the rain started early. The air felt heavy, thick, like a thin film of smoke clinging to the 14th floor windows. I was in the tech department when the email landed. From Richard's assistant. "Richard would like to see you privately." At 11, no reason, no subject, just that curt line, no period at the end, like even the sender was trying to stay neutral. I closed my laptop, stood up, adjusted my collar, suddenly felt a chill. Not from the AC. It was a feeling deep in my gut, damp and cold like the moisture seeping from the hallway tiles. The CEO's office looked the same. Tidy, minimalist, that faint scent of expensive walnut furniture. Richard Hayes stood with his back to me, hands shoved in his pockets, staring out at the rain, streaking down the glass like wet ink. He didn't ask me to sit. I didn't wait. I pulled out the chair opposite his desk, the one I'd sat in so many times before, and waited. It felt like a long time before he finally turned around. Same sharp features, same immaculate grooming, but today, his eyes wouldn't quite meet mine. Like he was carefully rehearsing his lines. "Michael, I'll keep this brief," he began, his voice low, steady, completely flat. "The company is entering a new phase. We're restructuring the team." I didn't say anything. Just watched him. Waited. After reviewing the system's capabilities, he continued, his gaze dropping to a file on his desk. "The board has determined that the AI platform you built can now handle the majority of the ongoing technical workload. Which means," he paused. The silence hung heavy in the air, thick and still. "We no longer require your position." I stayed perfectly still. The first wave wasn't shock. It was emptiness. A sudden, quiet void. Like a part of me had just been surgically removed without a sound. "We deeply appreciate your contributions. No one is denying what you did for us," Richard added, the words sounding robotic, pre-programmed. "You got us through a very tough time. But we now need people better aligned with our future direction." "Better aligned?" I echoed, my voice barely a whisper, raspy. "Jude has a more dynamic approach," Richard said, still focused on the file. "He understands the market, connects well with clients, and, crucially, he knows how to optimize the system without getting bogged down by sentiment." I nodded slowly. It clicked. For the first time, I truly understood. In their world, my caring about accuracy, about the users, about the people involved, that was a weakness. A liability. "Thank you," I said, leaning forward just slightly. "Do I need to clear out my desk today?" Richard hesitated. Just for a second. "No. You can stay through the end of the week if you need to. But it might be easier for everyone if you left sooner." I stood up. No handshake. No parting words. Walking down the hall, my steps felt slow, deliberate. Nobody looked up. Nobody knew what had just happened in that office. But I felt watched. Not by people. By it. The system I'd built. Felt like its cold, digital eyes were following me as I walked away. Like a machine observing the disposal of its first, now obsolete, component. Down in the parking garage, I climbed into my old Ford, the one I'd driven for over 10 years. The smell of old leather, the drumming of rain on the roof. I just sat there for a minute, engine off. I opened the glove compartment, took out my father's watch. The worn strap, the scratched face, the second hand sweeping slowly like it was tired too. I stared at it, not realizing tears were stinging my eyes until one dripped onto the back of my hand. I remembered Dad's words. "Don't ever let them define your worth by a paycheck or a title, because sooner or later, they'll change both, and how they see you along with it." I'd always thought, just do good work, be decent, stay out of the politics, and it would be enough. My mistake was forgetting the people at the top didn't see the person. They saw the output, the charts, the bottom line. Did Richard remember that night? I stayed up all night, coaxing the system back online after a crash. Did Jude have any clue that building the first prototype meant I barely saw my son for 3 weeks? No, they didn't remember, and they didn't need to. I didn't go straight home. Drove around the city aimlessly, past familiar streets, the coffee shop where I used to grab my morning cup, the gas station where the attendant knew my name. The whole city felt like it was moving on without me, functioning perfectly like nothing had changed. Only I wasn't in the same place anymore. When darkness fell, I pulled over near the harbor, listening to the gentle slap of water against the concrete. Rolled down the window, let the damp, salty air fill the car. Let the sound of the waves mingle with the cold wind. I didn't feel anger, just hollow, utterly hollowed out, like a breathing, driving shell of a man who'd lost his anchor. I held up the watch, turned the scratched face towards me. "Dad," I whispered to the empty car, "real value. Does anyone even remember what that is anymore?" That night, I didn't sleep. Just sat there, in the dark, listening to the waves, feeling a core belief drain right out of me. I thought the emptiness would last. But after just 3 days, I realized the worst part wasn't the empty hours, it was the missing routines. Not opening the work email first thing. Not standing at a whiteboard, mapping out logic. Not getting those quick messages. "Mike, can you take a look at this?" Just the quiet kitchen. The weak morning coffee. The 3-chair dining table where only one person sat. And my work laptop sitting closed since I walked out. The last notification still frozen on the lock screen. "Jude Carter has updated access permissions." I didn't turn it on. Shut it down completely. I didn't need to see what they were doing with my system anymore. Until one afternoon, standing in line at the local pharmacy, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Michael Turner? A man's voice, sharp, urgent. Speaking. This is Tom, from Phoenix Tech. We were one of your big clients. I remembered Phoenix. Medical device software. They were early adopters of the expanded AI, gave great feedback initially. We've got a serious problem, Tom said, his voice tight. Your old company's tech support system, it's giving bad advice. This morning, it suggested the wrong calibration settings for a shipment. Forced a hospital to halt deployment. We're talking respiratory equipment here. Michael, my hand tightened on the phone. I couldn't speak. I tried calling your old company, he went on, but they keep insisting the system is fine. We heard you left, but you built the damn thing, didn't you? I took a slow, deep breath. Outside, a light rain had started again. Tiny drops tapped against the windshield of a parked car. Each tap felt loud in the silence. Yes, I said quietly. I wrote the original code. So tell me, Tom pressed, if the system learns from feedback but can't tell negative context, what happens? I closed my eyes, saw the lines of code in my head, like flipping through an old, familiar book. It starts to adapt. Incorrectly, I said slowly. It learns the wrong lessons. It sees negative keywords, but misses the sarcasm, the frustration. It might take fine, I guess, is positive. Temporary fix as problem solved. And then it starts making suggestions based on flawed data. Silence on the other end. Then just a low curse. Damn it, that was just one call. But it was the first domino. 3 days later, an article popped up on a major tech forum. When AI misreads the room. The hidden dangers of unsupervised systems. It cited multiple anonymous client sources. Phoenix was clearly one of them, detailing how an AI support system was causing chaos, misinterpreting requests, leading to costly errors. It even mentioned an incident that stalled a $1 million contract. My old company's name wasn't splashed across the headline, but anyone in the industry knew exactly who they were talking about. Then the text started. Old colleagues. A junior engineer from QA. The customer support lead. All variations of the same question. Mike, do you know what's happening? I didn't reply. I just read them. Then about a week after the Phoenix call, another text. Unsaved number. Just 4 words. You try to warn them. I stared at the screen, feeling like I was looking at a ghost of myself. The quiet guy in the corner, the one they call conservative, resistant to change, too emotional. I had warned them. They hadn't listened, and now the system was teaching them a lesson. Coldly, efficiently, without feeling. Exactly the way they had treated me. I knew what had to happen next. I built the damn thing. And I knew that people who think they're controlling the tech are usually the last ones to truly understand it. I just didn't know how long it would take them to admit they needed help. The answer came sooner than I thought. But that's the next part. That night, the rain had stopped, but a deep chill had settled in. Cool enough I needed a sweater, just sitting by the window. Streetlights cast blurry halos on the damp pavement outside. I couldn't sleep, not from anxiety this time. It was a strange, expectant feeling, like waiting for a tide to turn. And I knew, when the call came, it wouldn't announce itself politely. Around 2 a.m., the phone rang. Sharp, insistent rings piercing the quiet. I reached over, the screen glowing in the dark. Unknown number. But I knew. I answered. Said nothing. Silence on the other end for a few seconds, then ragged breathing. Dry, exhausted, like someone had run a marathon in cheap shoes. Then the voice, hoarse, strained, stripped of its usual confidence, but instantly recognizable. Michael, it's me. Richard. I didn't respond. Let the silence hang. Let him fill it. Sorry to call so late, he stammered. I don't have any other options. I looked out the window. A stray cat was huddled under a bare branch tree. The night was so still I could hear the faint tick-tock of the cheap clock on my kitchen wall, each second landing heavy in the quiet room. I need you to come back, Richard said, the words tumbling out now. The system, it's completely out of control, spitting out bad data, overriding safety protocols. Jude, he just walked out. No notice. Vanished. The tech team, they're lost. People are panicking. His voice cracked on the last word, sounding less like a CEO and more like a man clinging to a ledge. Still, I said nothing. Michael, he pleaded, his voice dropping to a whisper. I know. I know I screwed up. We screwed up. You're the only one who understands this thing, really understands it. Please come back. Help us fix this mess. I let the silence stretch again, long and deliberate. Then I spoke, each word measured. I won't come back, unless there's one condition. I heard him swallow. A dry, clicking sound. What condition? I want a written statement, I said evenly. Signed by you. Not drafted by legal, not edited by PR. One single page, stating clearly, I continued, my voice steady, who developed the system from the ground up, who ignored explicit warnings about the risks, and who was ultimately terminated by the very success they created. Michael, he started, a note of desperation creeping back in. I don't need an apology, Richard. I cut him off, my voice firm now. I need the truth. On paper. No spin. No excuses. Another long pause. Longer than before. Felt like I could hear the gears turning in his head, weighing pride against disaster. Finally, a heavy sigh, like he'd just swallowed gravel. All right, he said, the word heavy with resignation. I'll write it. I hung up. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't sleep the rest of the night. But it wasn't worry keeping me awake. It was relief. A slow, spreading warmth. Like something tight and cold inside my chest for months had finally started to loosen its grip, letting me breathe again. Next morning, I woke early. Made coffee, same routine. Opened the window, let the cool, clean air wash over the kitchen, smelling faintly of the night's rain. Opened my laptop. Check my email. One new message. Attachment file name, acknowledgement. I clicked it open. A single page. Just like I'd asked. Plain text. No corporate jargon. No attempt to soften the blow. Just the facts. I, Richard Hayes, CEO of company name, confirmed that Michael Turner was the sole lead developer of the internal AI system critical to the company's financial recovery. I further confirm that I disregarded Mr. Turner's documented warnings regarding the risks associated with inadequate system oversight. I accept full responsibility for the decision to eliminate his position, a decision which directly contributed to the subsequent system failures and operational crisis. I read it through 3 times, not because I didn't believe it, but because for the first time in 22 years, I was seeing raw, unvarnished truth committed to paper, not buried in a report, not hinted at in coded language, but stated plainly by the man who'd cast me aside. I printed it, folded it carefully into thirds, tucked it into the old wooden cabinet by my front door. Then I got dressed, not the usual button-down and slacks. A dark gray sweater, jeans, my old, comfortable leather shoes, the heels worn smooth. I wasn't going back there to make a statement or reclaim anything. I was going back to finish the job. The office felt frantic, people rushing, faces tight with stress. Jude Carter was gone, his name already fading like a bad dream. The familiar faces I passed, they looked at me differently now, like I was a ghost, or maybe someone pulled a lie from wreckage. Richard was waiting by the elevators on the 14th floor. He didn't say much, just nodded, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. No need for words now. I nodded back, walked into the tech department. The big monitors were a sea of red error messages. Algorithms spiraling, chasing their own tails like frantic, lost code. I sat down. In my old chair. It was still there. Nobody had moved it. The back still wobbled a bit. The cushions still indented from years of use. It felt right, like coming home in a strange way. And I started to type, just the steady click of the keys in the tense silence. Fixing broken code, untangling knots, resetting parameters. A few of the younger engineers gathered behind me, watching silently. I didn't explain. I just worked, methodically, cleanly. The morning bled into the afternoon. Focused silence. And then, the final sequence executed. The wall of red flickered and turned green. A single word appeared, system stable. I leaned back in the chair, let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Didn't wait for Richard. Didn't need the thanks. I compiled a clear, concise manual detailing the fixes and necessary ongoing checks. Left it on the main console. Then I walked out, carrying nothing but that folded piece of paper in my pocket. Before leaving the building, I stopped at the reception desk, signed out in the visitor log, added one simple line beneath my name. Humans shouldn't be replaced. They should be supported. Probably no one would notice. But maybe someday, someone would flip through that old logbook, see that line, and understand. Understand that efficiency isn't everything. That the human element isn't a bug. It's the core operating system. Stepped outside. The sky had cleared completely. Bright sunlight warmed the damp pavement. A light breeze rustled the leaves. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. For the first time, I was walking away not because I was forced out, but because I had chosen what was worth saving and what was finally time to let go. I didn't tell anyone I was only staying for the week. It wasn't about being mysterious or keeping them at arm's length. It was simpler than that. There was nothing left to explain in that building. I came back to fix what was broken, and then I would leave quietly like I was never really there. Those 7 days passed in a kind of focused hush. I barely went near the executive floor. Attended 0 meetings. Answered only essential emails directly related to the system repair. I wasn't interested in reclaiming territory or debating my value. I just dug into the code. Stripped away the layers of clumsy additions Jude had bolted on, the misguided attempts to make the AI smarter by feeding it more data without understanding the underlying logic. I rebuilt it from the foundation I'd laid years ago, restoring the core principles, the checks and balances, the nuanced connections between user input and system response. I even found comments I'd written 5 years prior, buried deep in the code. Note, don't automate empathy. Someone had deleted that line. I typed it back in. One afternoon, elbow deep in debugging the feedback analysis module, one of the young engineers walked over. Silently, he placed a steaming mug of coffee on the desk beside me, then just nodded and walked away. It was black, no sugar, just how I liked it. I looked at the mug for a long moment, a small smile touching my lips. Some forms of respect don't need words. By day 7, it was done. The system was stable, truly stable. No more phantom errors, no more corrupted data streams, no more bizarre, off-kilter responses. It was running clean, efficient, predictable, the way it was meant to from the start. I printed a final, comprehensive report, put in a clean plastic binder, left it on Richard's desk early Monday morning. He wasn't there yet. That was fine. I added a small, handwritten note on top. It's fixed. I'm not staying. That was it. No invoice, no demands, no mention of compensation. I hadn't come back for the money. On the main tech desk, I left something else, a thick 48-page manual. Detailed diagrams, flowcharts, explanations of the restored logic, potential pitfalls, emergency overrides. Written in plain English, simple terms. Not for the executives who hadn't understood it the first time, but for the next generation of engineers. For the quiet ones who might be sitting in the corner someday, understanding the machine better than the people giving the orders. Before walking out of the building for the last time, I swung by the tech department entrance. The room felt different, calmer. A few heads nodded as I passed. No one called out my name, but I saw it in their eyes, a quiet understanding. A shift. As I reached the elevators, Richard came rushing down the hall. He looked exhausted, hair unkempt, shirt rumpled. A far cry from the polished CEO. "You could stay, Michael," he said, his voice rough, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "Name your price. Double salary. Equity. Whatever you want." I shook my head. Gently. I didn't come back for a job, Richard, or for money. I came back because I built that thing, and I didn't want to hurting people. He pressed his lips together. Then a slow nod. The fight seemed to have gone out of him. Just a man facing the consequences. I reached into my coat pocket, felt the folded paper. "I'll be keeping this," I said quietly, holding his gaze now. Not to wave it around, just as a reminder that sometimes the truth doesn't need shouting, but it does need acknowledging. He didn't ask what this was. He knew. Maybe he was still scared of it. That was probably good. Fear, sometimes, is a better teacher than ambition. I stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut. In the brief reflection on the polished steel, I saw myself. A man whose hair had more gray than he remembered, eyes tired but clear, shoulders straight. My hand rested on the old watch in my pocket. It felt like 10 a.m. A good time, I thought, for a new beginning. I walked out of the building without a backward glance. No fanfare, no applause, just the cool morning air on my face, the open sky above, and a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. Because finally, truly, I didn't need anyone else's validation. I knew my worth, and I knew I'd done the right thing. That was enough. A year after walking out of that building for good, my life is quiet. In the best way. No more 8-hour days staring at glowing screens, monitoring data streams. No more endless charts, performance metrics, rushed meetings under fluorescent lights. I moved away from the city, back to the small town where my mom grew up. 2 hours away, but feels like a different world. Rolling hills, quiet streets where kids still ride bikes, a little coffee shop downtown that's only open when the owner feels like it. I rented a small, single-story house on the edge of town. White paint, sloping roof, a porch big enough for a bench, and some hanging plants. Bought a solid oak desk, put it right by the window, looking out at the trees. On the wall opposite, I hung up that old whiteboard from my first office, the only thing besides the watch I kept. Now, instead of code snippets, it holds a sentence I wrote. Humans don't need to be smarter than machines. Just remember how to be human. I started a small class. Not teaching AI, not advanced algorithms. Just thinking. Logic, problem solving, the stuff tech schools sometimes forget. I didn't advertise much. Just put a handwritten flyer up at the local bakery. Class on programming and systems thinking. Especially for anyone who's ever been told they weren't smart enough. The first one to show up was a kid, maybe 17. Skinny, nervous, grease under his fingernails. He practically folded himself into the wooden chair, looking at me like he expected to be kicked out. I don't have a laptop, he mumbled. I slid an old refurbished one across the table. That's okay, I said. Around here, we learn with our heads first, then our hands. He just stared at me for a long second, then gave the tiniest nod, like he was slowly lowering a shield he'd carried for years. After him came others. A single mom who dropped out of college. A former delivery driver who wanted to understand spreadsheets. Even an electrician in his late 50s who muttered he was probably too old for this computer stuff. The class never got bigger than 10 people. We met in the afternoons. Sunlight streaming through the blinds, dust motes dancing in the warm air. Sometimes I put on some quiet jazz during breaks. Often, we just sit in comfortable silence, everyone focused, the gentle tapping of keys the only sound. When someone finally got a piece of code to work, when their face lit up with that spark of understanding, I didn't clap. I just nodded, smiled, because I knew sometimes the most valuable recognition isn't loud praise. It's just a quiet look that says, I see you. Keep going. One late afternoon, after class, that first skinny kid hung back, stood shifting his weight for a minute, then pulled a folded piece of paper from his worn backpack. You can read it later, he mumbled, shoving it towards me. Just want to say thanks. I looked at him, really looked. The wary defensiveness was gone from his eyes, replaced by something else, a flicker of confidence, the light that ignites when someone starts to believe they might actually be capable. That evening, sitting on my porch swing as the sun went down, I unfolded the letter. The handwriting was messy, earnest. You were the first teacher who didn't make me feel stupid, it read. My mom actually cried when I showed her the first program I wrote that worked. I always thought I was only good for fixing bikes. Thanks for seeing something else, I guess. Before I could, I folded the letter carefully, put on the small table beside the swing. Then, slowly, deliberately, I unclasped my father's old watch from my wrist. I'd worn it every single day for over 20 years. Through crises and deadlines, triumphs and betrayals. It had been my anchor, my connection to the past, the one tangible thing I carried out of that old life. But that evening, I placed it gently on the wooden windowsill inside the house, like putting an old soldier, finally, respectfully at rest. I sat there for a long time, just breathing in the cool evening air, smelling the damp earth from an earlier rain shower. Through the window, I could see the whiteboard in the empty classroom, the words I'd written still visible. True value needs no name. And I thought, maybe I finally understood. It wasn't about being replaced. It was about leaving a place that had forgotten how to recognize worth and finding another place, building another space where sometimes all it takes is a quiet nod, a shared understanding, a simple belief in potential to help someone start building a whole new life, including my own.